June 14th, 2019. Wow, I have a special show for you tonight. I have Mercedes Leal on tonight, and we're going to talk about out-of-body experiences and miracles. And she wrote something very incredible called the Miracle Code Book. Welcome, Mercedes.
Thank you very much, Cathy. It's a pleasure and a great honor to be here in your company and to be in the company of your wonderful listeners.
Well, when I saw you on Twitter, no, I'm sorry, LinkedIn. Oh my goodness.
I'm on both.
I really like the positive information that you put out, and that's why I contacted with you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to read this. This is about you, so everybody gets a little bit of an idea. Mercedes was raised in a family of loving, inspirational achievers, and the author was already living within the principles of the Miracle Code when an unexpected near-death experience enhanced and upgraded what was already known but partially forgotten. I love that. Through true dramatic initiations of light by a giant being of brightest illumination, new skills were implanted and an upgraded mindset was installed into the writer. There was also the revelation of a shocking secret discovered in that celestial realm through a telepathic conversation with a relative who had died many years before the author's birth and of whom no one had ever heard. 10 years later, solving the mystery provided proof of the celestial journey. Collectively, this data created a simple, easy code for an enhanced state of being as humanity was created to enjoy from birth, and I can't wait to hear what it is. Now, the code is everyone's heritage to claim and everyone's legacy to live for a better, happier life on planet Earth. And really, guys, who does not want that right now? There are no rituals, symbols, yay. For those pot smokers out there, no symbols, remember anything or requirements. And because it's based on the purity of maternal love, it spans all religious beliefs and the absence of belief based on mutual respect, unity, and care of each other. And the story unfolds biographically, and the code is woven into the lives of 3 generations in 3 countries and 3 cultures spanning 150 years. Wow. All right. So how do we start at A?
Well, I suppose A was an idyllic childhood. Can you hear me okay? Yes. So I had a very idyllic childhood. I was brought into the world by 2 magnificent parents. My father was a very positive achiever, a very determined individual. And he was also a very loving, fair man. He believed in equal opportunities, equal justice. And my mother was very, very loving, very forgiving, very accepting. She was unquestionably the closest to the divine that you could have got on earth. And interestingly, she had an amazing sense of humor. And when I was in that out-of-body experience, that near-death experience, the being of light that initiated me into 2 magnificent ceremonies also had a great sense of humor. I didn't expect that.
Well, I have to say, when I was, 30 years ago, and I was taking a class, someone said, if you are in a channel, someone's doing a channeling, spirit or anything, and if they don't have a sense of humor, you run like the wind, because they're not right. Beings have a sense of humor.
Yes, definitely, without question. It's an essential part of development. But I had always been led to believe from my very early Christian upbringing. I have no religion now, unless you call my religion love, pure love. But in those early days, when I used to be going to Sunday school, I believed in the hell and damnation figure of God. I don't even say God anymore, because in that experience I had, the being that initiated me did not say God. The word was the creator. So that's the expression I've used since then, because being in that level of highest wattage, which is so full of divine adoration and joy and all the good things you want out of life, the connectivity, the unity, the oneness, you have to, I totally bow to that experience because it changed my life and it's changed many people's lives since then.
All right, I'm going to go back to B. What is an out-of-body experience?
Ah, what a wonderful question. Now, I can only speak from my perspective, but what happened to me one night in my little Surrey apartment, well, actually, it was quite a big Surrey apartment, in 1982. So I went to bed, was very restless, and I suddenly realized I hadn't slept for hours. And I looked at my clock and it said 3 a.m. And suddenly, as soon as that registered, I was in another place. There was no tunnel, there were no lights. I just went from being in my land bed into being in this wonderful realm where love was in the grasses, in the trees, in the branches, in the breezes. Love was everywhere. And I looked around in delight and I thought, this is my real home. That place, even in those first seconds, felt more like my home than what became the imposter in that London apartment, London, England. And as I looked around, becoming very familiar with this wonderful loveliness, the trees were communicating with me, welcoming me back, and being very excited about something that they knew would happen, but I didn't. And there was the most exquisite sound. The noise was, I don't know if you've heard Jim Wilson's chorus of crickets. I give data about that in the book. It is a wonderful song, a wonderful tune, which is made by crickets. And it's a very high pitched, it's like boys sopranos hitting those highest notes. And you feel it in every cell of your being. And I could hear this noise. It was akin to bells in the distance, very high pitched bells. And I felt this connection. The tree trunks felt like male, paternal, caring energy. And the branches were like feminine energy. They were like aunts and mothers being very welcoming and caring of me. And then the little tendrils were dipping down and playing with my invisible head, because when I went down, I was totally transparent. Now, at that point, when I'm enjoying this place and thinking, well, yes, I think I'll stay here, I have to say, I had left behind in that apartment my very wonderful mum and my adored daughter. And suddenly, even though I cared about them, I had this feeling of detachment. So it was purest love without the emotional burden that we tend to attach to love when we're earth people. So enjoying this wonderful ambience, suddenly a lady started gliding towards me. When you're in that realm, anything you need to know is instantly in your head. You're like a ready-made personal Google to yourself. And I knew immediately who she was. She was my mother's sister. But I was puzzled. I thought, well, why hasn't my mother mentioned her? But when I shot the second question, I realized I had overstepped the mark because she put a barrier up and I couldn't download any more information. I knew that was not a question I was supposed to be asking because she was protecting someone. So chastened, I didn't ask any further, but I thought I'd get closer to her. She said, no, don't come any further. Don't cross that line. Don't cross that line. And then instinctively, I knew if I crossed that line, there would be some sort of no going back. So I stayed my ground out of respect for older people, which is something I've grown up with. Then the most wonderful thing happened. She was having difficulty getting rid of me. We were equally matched, or she was probably more polite than I was, because I was beginning to feel like a I've never gate crashed anything in my life, but I was beginning to feel like that unwanted guest in a nice way. And then she summoned help above my head, and I could feel this conversation going on above my level, above my frequency probably. And suddenly there was this feeling of love magnified just behind me to my right. Very gently, very, very slowly, it came. And eventually it stood about 10 to 15 feet in front of me. The love was indescribable. There was a being, a male, I knew it was a male personality, of brightest light in the middle of concentric ovals of bright, bright, bright light. And in that figure, all the love was being poured over me. It was probably about, I don't know, 10 to 12 feet tall. And with the rings, it was probably well over 15 feet. And then the being showed me a column, a most amazing column of brightest light, and indicated me that that represented the passion that we're supposed to be putting into everything that we do on earth. I won't go into the detail of that, but then he also came towards me, and very, very slowly, and eventually he and I became one. And that for me was a pinnacle of bliss. That joy just spiraled up and up and up and up and up until we hit this amazing peak. And at that point, I said, I know I'm only going to have this opportunity. I just felt this was a transient experience. So I said, who are you? And why is this happening to me? And the telepathic response was, you have a duty to perform that you have not yet fulfilled. And then he told me what I had to do. And then he said, I am the creator of all that is. You must go back. And then he added something that shattered all of my Sunday school teachings, because he said, whatever you do, you'll be loved. And so I realized there was so much information, because even though I'm giving you the words which were transported into my mind telepathically, there was a lot of information that was being transmitted to me about acceptance and the purity of love and where we got it wrong and how we could put it right. So all of that information was being crammed. Even though there were a few words, the data was exponentially valuable. And when I woke up the next morning, because I suddenly was sent back into my bed, I asked my mother about this experience, and she couldn't talk. She couldn't discuss this sister that I'd known. She wouldn't confirm it as yes or no. I had to wait 10 years until one day she said, I know I'm going to die soon. And one day you're going to write about me. I had no plan to write anything. She said, but one day you're going to write about me. And I want you to know the truth. And she told me the truth about that person that I'd seen and why she had been kept secret.
Wow.
So it confirmed I'd gone somewhere.
It's amazing when spirit gives us confirmation. Now, you also said earlier that you had a near-death experience.
Yes, well, that was it. Because I died, I was transparent. I was
Ah,
transparent. I was transported into this realm where I knew was the next stage. It was like, because we have life after life. But that reality is much more alive than anything we have on earth. So totally transparent, communicating telepathically, having a conversation with the creator, that totally, completely transformed my life. My life became charmed. My telepathic skills went off the scale of high. And I was given in that experience the gift of healing. So I've been doing healing quietly ever since then.
Amazing. Well, can anybody have an out-of-body experience like that?
Well, I have to say it wasn't anything I had designed, nor had I expected. It's a question that I think relates to a person's individual frequency. At that time, I was doing, with hindsight, a very noble job in taking care of my mum, who had been quite seriously ill. And I had been utterly selfless, totally dedicated to her recovery. And I was helping lots of people. I was in a very demanding job. I was having to earn enough to pay school fees for my daughter, having to pay for my mother's medical bills. And everything to me was such a blessing. It didn't feel like a chore or a sacrifice. People would say, oh my gosh, your whole life is being sacrificed for others. But it didn't seem that way. So mindset matters, and a person's ability to love and give with purity, total altruism matters. So the answer to your question is yes, if they can reach that level of vibrational frequency, anything is possible.
All right. So after this happened, what would you consider your biggest success? And what would you consider, what do you mean by that, by success?
Well, after I had the experience, and my mother waited 10 years to confirm that, to give me more information on that person I'd seen. And I realized I'd really gone somewhere. When she told me she was about to die, I panicked because I really adored my mother. I knew she was ill, but I didn't realize to the extent at which she was ill. So I took her to the first doctor, and he was very callous. He said, oh, she's in her 60s, let her go. You know, she's had a good life, let her go. I was mortified. So I made a pact with myself to start giving my mother what I could only call a calendar of joy. I made every day very special. And I started looking for other experts in the various medical fields which related to her. And I found, by strokes of amazing good fortune, the right people. I wanted doctors, consultants, top people, for example, who understood older people and wouldn't talk down to her, because every minute of her life for me had to be as joyous as possible. So an experience with a doctor who would perhaps be rude, dismissive, was not on. And one by one, the right people just came, one after the other. And I had people who were reverential towards older people, who had a sense of humor, who valued her elegance and her humor. And I think that the purpose of that experience I had was probably to help my mother to keep living, because she managed to exist for another nearly 16 years despite that imminently terminal medical diagnosis.
Well,
So that was my greatest success.
That's amazing, but who wouldn't want to stick around when you're being having such joy created around you all the time?
Exactly.
And it gives you something to live for.
Yes. But I'll give you one example. I remember once, my mother she went into hospital for a standard. She was seriously ill for the whole time, but she kept living, and she kept living happily. And she had to go into hospital for regular blood transfusions. And on one of these occasions, in our local private hospital, she was given the wrong blood, and she went into cardiac arrest. And I thought I was going to lose her. For 5 days, she was in a coma. And I was asked if the hospital could pull the plug. And I said, no, you're not God. Don't play God with me. Don't play God with my mother. And I went into her intensive care unit, and I telepathically communicated with her all the plans I was making, because she had a massive birthday party each year. She had dinner parties each week. I took her and her friends out to the theater, to tea parties. I had them home for all sorts of events. And I was determined she was going to recover. But what happened after that was that in addition to the coma, coming out of the coma, she had I don't know quite how I could put this into words. Probably the biggest success you could say that I had with her was she came up with a gangrenous foot. I don't know how to put this because it was so painful. She came up with a gangrenous foot. I didn't know how to deal with this foot. The nurses walked out of my home one morning, and they said, she has to have the foot off. We can't deal with this. I went into my zone, and I went on my computer and I typed in the symptoms. I came up with a product from America. I thought, whoa, I'm in England. This is in America. This is ideal. It's gentle. It's perfect for her. I called the company and I left a message. Half an hour later, I had a call back from the vice president of marketing of that company. It was a company called Oculisys. And he said, I was moved by your message. You can get this product that is made under license in Holland. And he gave me the number. So I called Holland. I thought, well, Holland's a bit close from America. Called Holland. This is a Saturday morning. And I thought, nobody's going to be there. Somebody picked up the phone and said, normally I wouldn't be here, but yes, I'm doing some research. And I can tell you, you can get that product from a pharmacy in London. So I called the London pharmacy. They had 2 bottles. I said, they're mine. They're mine. They're for my mom. Please send them by courier. I will pay to have those delivered to me by courier. So a couple of hours after that nurse walked out, I had the only product. No doctor, no consultant, no therapist, no nurse could believe how my mother's foot improved as a result of this product. So that was probably one of my biggest miracles as well.
That's decent. That's pretty nice. Absolutely. Now you say after you've had this out-of-body experience, you had different healing abilities. What kind of healing abilities do you have?
Well, I discovered that not long after that, a cousin of mine who lived in Paris said to me on the Paris metro, the Paris train system, if I should die, I want to help you. I want to come back and tell you what it's like, and I will help you. And I thought, this is so morbid. I don't want to know. Please, I don't want to know. But he did die not long after that. And I had a friend who had a son who was addicted to heroin. She was a very successful businesswoman, and she was becoming more and more worried about this boy. But I was nervous. I thought, I have no experience of drugs. I have no idea how to handle this. I didn't have faith in what my cousin had said, that he would come back to help me, specifically to help young people. So I left it for about 8 years. And then my friend became so depressed. She looked as if she was going to die herself. So I said, I have to help her. And I communicated telepathically with my cousin who had died and with the young man who had the problem through the mother. And to cut a very long story short, within 2 days, he came off heroin. And I thought, well, is this a coincidence? I had another call from another mother whose daughter. I've had to change identities in the book a bit so people are not recognized. But this lady, she actually had a daughter who was in very bad company. She was being rude to her mother. Mother didn't know how to cope. And again, I communicated with the daughter through my cousin, Clyde Ali. And cut another long story short, we discovered that there was one particular pupil in this girl's school who was influencing her. Within 5 days, he left the school and she regained her great relationship with her mom. I had another story fairly recently with a mother who was having great difficulty with a son. And she was feeling lower and lower as the son was taking tremendous advantage. Spoke to the son through my cousin and the mother. The son's behavior ceased immediately, and he became a paragon of familial virtue to his mother. So I'm always shocked. I never expect anything to happen, and I feel humble when I go into these exercises. All I seek is to help the relationship between two people.
All right, let's talk about the miracle code.
The miracle code.
Yes.
Well, this is something which really was nearly 150 years in the making. It was probably about 135, 140 years. And it started with my maternal grandmother, who was a herbalist. And she was able to create potions which made barren women have children.
Now,
And she,
in England?
No, she worked in the Caribbean. She lived in Dominica, the Caribbean, initially, and then she moved to St. Kitts. And it was a very successful business. She had 7 children altogether. And she would travel all around the world, well, certainly around the Americas, should we say, with her children. And she read extensively, but everything she did was based on the purity of love, that altruistic love. For instance, if she was preparing food, she would never, we have a common practice with a lot of celebrity chefs who will dip a utensil in food and taste it and put the same spoon back in the thing again. She would be very pristine about what she did for other people. Everything was kept on the highest possible levels of consideration and care and love and purity. She also had an amazing sense of humor, and she imparted those skills into my mother. So my mother was very ambitious. And as a child, for instance, she wanted to marry a diplomat or a prince or somebody who would, give her this fairy tale life. I mean, every child dreams of this, but we grow out of it. My mother never did. And she wanted to have this grand life so that she could help other people. Now, she was living quite a nice life as a child. She had a very well-to-do life, like a very sort of middle-class life, not anything particularly special, but certainly not poor. And she wanted to dance palaces with queens and princes and to have a living maid and to be able to entertain lots of people and to be able to help children. And she achieved all of those things, which was pretty spectacular for a little girl in the middle of a, microscopic tropical island.
Mm-hmm. Were you also psychic when you were growing up?
Very, yes. Yes. We all were. In my family, it runs right through the line. In fact, when my mother died, I remember coming out of my bath quite early in the morning, and the left side of me went completely cold. And I thought, oh my God, with all the stress, I must be having some sort of stroke. And I was quite concerned. Then suddenly I got a kiss on my left ear and I knew it was my mum. I thought, she's been dead for 3 days. How can this be? I called my daughter the next morning and she said the same thing had happened to her. And I was so buoyed by this. I said, I've got to write to my brother. I wrote to my brother to tell him. And he wrote back immediately and said, the same thing happened to me. And he was 4,000 miles away. So in the whole family, we have this this connection between a much higher dimension and the earthly one. And we sometimes communicate through it. I can feel things about various family members, or I can feel predictions for people. I can look at a photograph and give an idea of the character of that person. So it's something we take for granted, and it's not anything that I speak about, because I'll be quite honest, even though I'm speaking to you now, it's really to be able to inspire people, because I don't really like talking about the things that I've done, if I'm honest.
Well, can anybody become telepathic, do you think? And, how does one enhance it? How do you recognize, that you're telepathic?
That is a very good question. I think one realizes one is telepathic when one sees the responses in other people, because you have the ability to let other people completely relax and be themselves. Anybody can be telepathic. Anybody can do any of those things that I've mentioned. Everything, as we know, is down to vibration frequency. And research has shown that it is those who are long-term committed to the welfare and goodwill of others, to the care of others, or maybe a specific other, who develop this. It's almost like an additional quality that goes beyond the basic 5 senses, because that concern that you're giving out to that person somehow reverberates and comes back to you. It's never done with the object of getting anything back, but it happens automatically. And by, for instance, decalcifying a pineal gland, the pineal gland, that little gland at the back of the head, that dictates a lot of a person's progress. But certain people are more predisposed towards calcification of that gland because of junk food, fluoride, toothpaste, or fluoride in water. And it cuts down that ability to connect with the other sort of more heavenly realms. So the pineal would be the first thing, I think, to check out if a person doesn't feel that empathy and that care for literally strangers. You could look at the newspaper picture and feel a tremendous affinity with somebody who's suffering and still want to make that person well, even though you'll never meet that person.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's give some practical examples of telepathy. Say if all of a sudden you think of a person and that person calls you,
Yes.
You're having a telepathic encounter.
Yes.
I know one way is maybe you have a breakup in a relationship and, you keep thinking about that person, and I call that telepathy ping pong. You're bouncing off of each other, and, then you have to be conscious. Now, when you become conscious that you're connected telepathically with somebody and you want to break it, do you have any suggestions on how to do that?
When you want to have a breakup, did you say?
No, you want to break that telepathic connection. Say maybe it's an old boyfriend or an old boss, somebody that you made angry that's no longer in your life that you really don't need to be thinking about anymore.
Okay, yeah, there is a way. There was a lady. I've met the most amazing people on this journey. They just appear when you need them. And one lady was called Betty Shine. She was an English psychic, medium, opera singer, healer, I mean, you name it. And she was the one who discovered David Icke. And she was my dearest friend and mentor for 20 years. And one of the things she taught me was about the auric egg. And she said, if you have a person in that situation that you really don't particularly want in your space anymore, if you can imagine putting that person in a giant ceramic egg, and you can make that egg as nice as you like. You can furnish it nicely with windows and curtains, but then you take that egg and you put it in the middle of the Pacific, or in your case, you could put it on planet Jupiter or wherever, you can put it anywhere. But you send that person with goodwill. You just barricade the communication mentally from between you and that person, and that's been an exercise that's worked for a few people and for me.
But you put it around the person, not you.
No, you put it around the person. Yes.
Okay.
But with goodwill. Yes, it's important not to just banish someone. You do it with tremendous affection and grace and gratitude for what that person has done. I call it the 3 Gs: grace, gratitude, and generosity. You put whatever you think they would like in that little that auric egg. You can make that egg as big as you like. You can make it as big as a house. But you mentally imagine that egg far away from you. You put distance between you, and that's been found to be very effective.
Oh, I like that idea. Simple, easy, and anybody can do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, what suggestions do you have for people about the miracle code?
You mean from the code?
Mm-hmm.
The biggest lesson lesson that we need to learn as humans is awareness. Because awareness, which should become your best friend, will trigger when you're in a situation which is not helpful, or when you're thinking thoughts that are not helpful, because most people's daily thoughts are 95% negative. They're not happy thoughts. They're thoughts of worry, anxiety, fear, distress, sorrow, because habitually that is how we have been raised. Most people. You could have had the most loving parents, but the minute you go to school, you are under quote coaching, and you have to deal with a lot of negative elements in life. People telling you off, telling you shouldn't do this, very, very negative things. And I think it helps a great deal to be able to use awareness as a trigger frequently during the day, so until it becomes a habit, so that if you feel yourself going under, if you feel yourself not being buoyant, inspired, motivated, calm, you know something is wrong with your subconscious. You have to bring the conscious mind to the surface to deal with that. And the best time to do that is when you're first waking up in the morning or just before you go to bed at night. And you can say to yourself things like, if you don't feel loved, I am lovable. Or if you're not feeling very inspired, I'm inspiring. I'm going to be inspired today. Today I'm going to find that magical thing that's going to help me. Because just before you awake, or just before you get out of bed and just before you sleep, your subconscious mind is at its most receptive for reprogramming. So awareness, if you can program it at those two times with more upbeat messages, will work better for you during the day. And the next best thing is perception. Most of us don't realize how much we have already. So if you can turn your life into one of gratefulness or gratitude for the smallest crumb, you immediately start to change your landscape. And because the more grateful you are, genuinely, the more you will, the better you will feel about yourself. Because
Well,
gratitude is a powerful thing. Sorry.
you mentioned about kind of reprogramming yourself in the morning and at night. Well, one of the things I do before I go to bed is I call to my higher self and the angels and ask that they help me be very efficient and organized the next day, so I'm very productive. And whoever comes in, their higher self shares with me what I need to do to help them release their pain and stress quickly and efficiently. And I find that the next day I'm very productive, things just kind of flow. So it's just kind of, putting what your thoughts were into a little bit practical application, and setting your day up. How do you set up your night, for the next day? Do you kind of do it that way?
Yes, every night I express the deepest gratitude for the day that I've had. And I've had some fair challenges. Despite the miracle code, it doesn't mean one lives a life of perfection. We are still challenged. We're here to be challenged. But we turn it around. For instance, if there is conflict with someone, I say to myself, what is that teaching me? What are the benefits for both of us from that conflict? And I have discovered, because since I have that out of body experience, I deal directly with the creator. I don't worry with middle people anymore. I just go straight to that wonderful light of intelligence. And I get downloads of information, downloads of reassurance. And with conflicts, I realize that often the people who cause us the most trouble in the world have most likely had a pact with us before we both came back to Earth, that they were going to be instrumental in helping us to overcome some specific, possibly ancestral block that we have been carrying and not been able to be rid of. So you can actually end up being less uncharitable to an adversary. You can be friendlier with somebody who's causing a lot of trouble if you change your perception, because perception is the other thing that's very helpful. Because ultimately, whatever you put in your mind can either take you towards happiness or away from happiness. Every single minute of every day, every second, you have that choice. Am I going to put happier thoughts in my mind? Or am I going to allow circumstances to dictate how I respond? Yes, as humans, we feel stimulus or stimuli. We will feel pain. We will feel disappointments and losses and sorrows. But we have options regarding how long those things affect us negatively. So I try to talk myself into recovery using perhaps unusual psychological means.
Someone said it's not what we go through, it's how we go through it.
Yes, I agree.
So if somebody wanted to work with you, what kind of clientele are you open to receiving?
Well, the people that I have helped most have been business people, professionals. I'll give you an example of one lady. She had nothing, and I thought it was going to be really hard to help her because she was very meek and timid, and I thought I'm not sure if I can do anything for her, but I felt kind of sorry for her. So I said I'd give her a try. And within the first year, she had written 2 books. She had got on a course, ministry course. She had crowdfunded to complete her master's in a very impressive subject. And within 18 months, she was left a small fortune, which helped her tremendously. So that's one businesswoman. There was another one that I helped who wanted to get a salary increase. She wanted to get a more senior position. But the most amazingly difficult thing was she wanted to meet a particular famous person. And I thought, this is a little bit outside of my remit, but why not? Let's give it a go. And she also had a relative who was living with her who drove her crazy. And she said, I don't know how to get rid of this person without being unkind. Well, in the 8 months that we were together, she got the salary increase. She got the job. She got the job promotion. She also got an opportunity to meet that well-known person, and they became really great friends. And the thing is, her relative met a romantic partner, and moved out all within 8 months. So things happen, yes.
Oh, that's
and it's business people.
That's lovely, but that's very exciting. But that's really lovely. So again, how do they contact you if they want to work with you?
They can contact me through. Well, there's a gift. Before I forget, there's a gift I would like to give everyone, and they can contact me through Facebook. My Facebook new page, which I created especially for you, Cathy. So it hasn't got any activity. I put things on it, but it hasn't got any responses yet because it's brand new. We only completed it yesterday. But they can contact me through Leal England, Leal England at AOL.com, or they can contact me through Facebook. And if they go to Facebook, they should go to facebook.com/The Miracle Code. And there will be a gift for them of the first chapter of the book.
Oh, sweet. All right. Now, if people want to work with you for healings, do they contact you also through Facebook?
Well, they can contact me through Leal England at AOL.com. Or they could contact me through Facebook. Yes, through Facebook, through the Facebook page that I've mentioned, The Miracle Code.
All right, now I have to ask this question. How do you charge?
Very often, I don't charge. Mm-hmm. I don't charge. It really depends on what an individual requires. I do healing for children, for example, completely free. In fact, I have a lovely story of a German psychologist who contacted me out of the blue. I was giving workshops some years ago, and she made contact and said, do you know of any healers? And I'm a little bit shy about what I do. So I said, well, no. But she said, well, I'm desperate because otherwise my son is going to need an operation because he's deaf and he can't hear at school and he's not going to be able to follow the language. So she said, there must be somebody you can think of. And I couldn't think of a single soul. Betty, my friend, Betty Shine had died. I didn't know of any other healers. So I said, look, I've done healing. I'm very willing to have a go for your son. and he was only 4 years old. So she brought him to me. She said, well, how many sessions will you need? I said, well, I ideally need 3. She said, I can only give you 2 because we're going to go to Germany for an operation. So I said, okay, if it's only 2 I've got, that's what we'll use. So for 2 sessions, it was such fun healing this little boy. And then the mother left and she went away for the, to see whether he would still need the operation. And I'll be quite honest, I never know. I'm never confident to say, oh, yes, I've done it. I'm magical. This is going to work. I always have that very humble prayer that I've been supported in this, because I know it's not me. I'm just a vessel. Mm-hmm. And I didn't hear anything for 3 weeks, and I really began to panic. And then I got this amazing letter in German, which I had to have translated because my German is appalling. And it said, thank you so much. When we took my son to the specialist, or to the ear, nose, and throat consultant, he said there was nothing wrong with his hearing. It had somehow been restored. So because I didn't charge her, she, out of the blue, she turned up at my doorstep one day with the biggest bunch of roses I've ever seen. I don't like cut flowers, I have to admit, but they were just so stunning. I don't like cut flowers because I don't like destroying plants. And a photograph of her son, which I can see now, this beautiful blonde-haired little boy. And she wrote at the top, a special message for the first time, and she meant on the little boy's name, can hear. Thank you so much. I would not have had that picture as a constant reminder of that experience if I had said, pay me, whatever. No, like everybody else, one has to live. So, and I have to manage my bills and affairs like everybody else. But generally speaking, money is not something that I can discuss like this. It's because it doesn't always come into play.
I think that's beautiful. You do your work from the heart, and everything you said makes total sense. And I have to honor you for that. Because my goal is, the more you give and not charge, you're working for the Creator, and you're not working for money. And God takes care of you.
Yes, definitely.
And, it's just hard to explain to people that you're just taken care of.
Yeah.
And it's incredible. So, I'm curious, when you do your consulting, is it more, you're talking to people, or is it all telepathy work?
It's both. If somebody wants a protracted level of inspired support, that's a different story. If I have to make a commitment to somebody, that takes a lot more out of me, because I then have to prepare a program. But if somebody approaches me and says, I have a little girl who has, I don't know, whatever, I can quite easily usually tap into that little girl's energy, and I can use my telepathic connection to my cousin, who was in the Paris Metro with me that day. And all of that is like under the umbrella of the Creator. Because everything I do is with the Creator's blessing. I'm not a perfect person. I still make my mistakes. But fundamentally, my heart is a loving one. And while I have to, one has to look after oneself, and I can't look after the whole world. But the people that do approach me for support, I try to give as much as I can on an individual basis, from one heart to the other.
I think that's incredible. You're a blessing to have on my show, and I appreciate you very much.
Oh, it's a mutual pleasure.
So you've how do people get your book? Same way, through the Facebook? And
yes. The book is not yet published. It will be published in another couple of weeks. The book is in 2 volumes. The first volume, which is about 230 something pages, relates to the groundwork, my Granny Alice's principles, which my mother followed. Granny Alice, for instance, had to have principles to attract the right partner. And my mother followed those principles without even knowing that. I did the same thing. But for the few massive long-term relationships I've had in my life that have been so supportive of me. And so the first book is the groundwork. And the second book, volume 2, is about what I did with that groundwork. And it gives a stream of miraculous evidences, for want of a better word, so people can see what can happen when you live within those really pleasant, incredibly inspirational parameters, because it isn't a difficult thing to change. It's actually very joyous. You feel so much better with yourself.
Well, can you give some hints to people on how you pull in that special person into your life?
Yes, of course. The first thing you have to learn, if you want to attract love, is how to love yourself. How to love. There are two things there. You have to learn how to love, and you have to learn how to love yourself. Because a lot of people go into relationships thinking, this is going to make me, this is going to enable me to do this, or it's going to enable me to feel good about myself. I'm going to have somebody to go to the theater with, or, to support me or whatever. But before all of that, you really have to get to know yourself. You have to be proud of yourself. And you have to know that you don't need anyone to complete you. It's just a bonus. A partner is not, a partner is the icing on the cake that is already you, the wonderful, tasty cake that is already you. And the ability to love is the ability to be able to accept someone, to spend time to get to know someone. Because most people think physical attraction is love. It's not. It's just physical attraction. Love is being able to see the other person's flaws, shortcomings, see them at their worst, and still feel that protective lovingness towards them, still wanting to protect them, even if they're not within your sight. That is not the case with most relationships, sadly.
Wow, again, that's beautiful, and that's true. Wow, this hour has just blown by. Unbelievable. That's what happens when you're really enjoying what you're listening to.
It's been a real pleasure.
I just want to remind everybody, mark your calendars, July 2nd, we're doing a Quantum Leap the World into Divine Enlightenment event. We're going to be chanting for 1 hour, Divine Enlightenment, and anchoring it to the planet. Next week, because it's summer equinox or solstice. I always get those two.
Summer solstice.
Summer solstice, and it happens to be on Friday night. So we're going to do some chanting and, again, really pulling down that divine energy and anchoring it to the planet. So get your group together, get your crystals, and let's make it a really nice quantum leap into enlightenment, which, the planet does need.
Indeed, it does. It does.
Well, thank you again for coming on.
It's been my pleasure.
I'm going to take some of what you have suggested and actually put into practical application. And I may get in contact with you for a few challenges I'm having.
Sure.
Thank you again. That's it for the guys, and hope I see you next week. This is Cathy Bilsky, the Quantum Leap Let Light Unite show on UPRN Radio. Same time. And for those of you that want to do extra energy work, all right, my Facebook page, Cathy Bilsky, I do 3 live videos. Mondays, we're chanting enlightenment. Tuesdays, we're talking about radiation and doing energy work for that. And Thursday, it's for the planet and the elementals and climate. So if you want to do extra energy work, tune in. You know, the more the merrier. And if we don't do it now, when is the time? You know, this is the time we have to put the extra energy in.
You're awesome, Cathy. Thank you for this opportunity.
It's mutually beneficial.
Thank you so much.
All right. Aloha. Good night, everybody.
Aloha.